Leadership Matters, which is the Institute of Managers and Leaders, the Australian Human Resource Institute have a magazine. So they're all the places that they would pitch to for the long lead media. Then we would try and get radio interviews, depending on how niche the subject is. Quite successful at getting our authors interviewed on radio. We get a lot of podcasts. The publicist will work to get them as guests on podcasts. And then online media are always looking for content. So they might do Q&As with our author about the book. They might interview them on a subject raised in the book, which also gives our authors an opportunity to promote their own business, of course. So yeah, it's a whole range. We do get on TV, so Sky News, the breakfast TV, usually weekend. But yeah, our publicist does an excellent job.
Well, that's huge, isn't it?
Mm. And he can't do it without the book. So if you went, I mean, some people will go to him and say, "Oh, can you run a campaign? I want to promote my business." And he will often say to them, "It's much easier for me to promote a book rather than to promote your business, because people are always interested in books."
Yeah, and it's got that sort of stamp of authority about it, I suppose.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, so if somebody approaches you and says, "Hey, I've got this idea,"
Yep.
And how long does that take from when they've talked to you to when there's something in the bookstores?
I'd say between but if you haven't written a word, then you're probably looking at 9 to 12 months. So anything longer, and people lose momentum. They always do. If it's longer than 12 months, they lose momentum. You have to make it a priority. So if you loosely think it's going to take me 3 to 6 months to write it, and we don't just sort of say, right, see you in 6 months. We coach you along the way, and even if you're working with a ghostwriter, we'll read chapters and give you feedback. If you're working on your own, very much part of the process is that we'll give you feedback, encouragement, just to check that you're on track. So when we get the final manuscript, then it takes us about 6 months to get it to market.
Right, that's fantastic. So that's not bad, is it? I mean, to start with an idea and help promote your business, to having something published and in a bookstore all in 12 months is pretty good. Yeah. I would have thought.
When we have that initial conversation, when we have that initial conversation with authors as well, I always remind them to write the book that they're going to be using in 12 months' time. So it has to be very much strategically aligned with what they're doing, because otherwise, in 12 months' time, if they've changed direction in their business, for example, say they were a coach and the book is all about coaching, and then they've changed to do something, I don't know what else they do, but something a bit different, strategic planning or something, then the book's not going to be relevant and they're not going to be as enthusiastic about promoting it. So the book really has to be strategically aligned to where you see your business going over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's a great point, isn't it, to get the most out of that investment.
Yeah.
So Lesley, maybe tell us a little bit about the challenges in your industry. Because I'm sure you've been through, the industry must have been through turmoil just like a lot of other industries recently, but maybe thinking longer term as well, what some of the challenges are,
Look, our biggest challenge for not personal finance books, but leadership books, thought leadership books, has been that everybody still thinks if it's written by an American author, it's a lot better than an Australian author.
Oh, wow.
For some reason. If you think about all the books the big business books, they're nearly all American books, Good to Great. I'm going back a long time, but even at the moment, the current books, like, the Netflix books, or the Netflix story is one that I'm reading at the moment. They all seem to think that if it comes out of America, it's a lot better. So there's always a smaller market for Australian authors, which, it's my challenge to change that, I think. So competitively, there's only one other big competitor who specialises in business books, and that's Wiley. And I think there's plenty of room for both of us, actually, in the marketplace, although we are nipping at their heels as far as market share is going. This year has been challenging for us in a number of ways. Most recently, the Victorian shutdown has meant that in Melbourne, bookstores have been closed for 3 months. So although they've been doing click and collect, and they've actually been quite innovative in still getting books selling books.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same as browsing a bookstore. You know, whenever you browse in a bookstore, you never buy the book that you went in to get. You buy 2 or 3 others as well, or a lot of people do. So
Yeah.
so that's been challenging. When this hit in March, travel stopped, and our second biggest sales channel up until then was the airport bookstores. So that just went overnight and still hasn't come back. And that's not likely to come back till, you know, I don't know.
And that's
Maybe
because there's a lot of executives traveling, I assume.
Yeah. And in fact, yeah, a lot of our books, they're just sort of a 2-hour read, really. You pick it up on the way to Sydney from Melbourne, read half it on the way there, half it on the way back, come out with 3 or 4 good ideas. You think, brilliant, that was great, $30 well spent. So that's affected our business. I have to say that most of the airport bookstore business was in internal travel. So as soon as we can get execs flying across Australia again, that should start to lift. Yeah, so they were the challenges this year. Fortunately, the printers stayed open. Fortunately, our distribution services stayed open, and our sales team was still working remotely, talking to booksellers. Yeah.
So do you guys publish books overseas, or you just operate in Australia? How does the industry work?
You can buy our books anywhere in the world from Amazon.com, bookdepository.com.
Right.
So there we always have had that kind of global market, but they're we call it print on demand. So when you want to order a book in America, one of our books in America, you order it on Amazon.com, they print 1 copy and send it out to you. The books don't come from stock. So they're kind of small quantities. But we're just launching our list in the UK next year. So we're working with the UK sales and distribution company, and we're shipping some stock over there. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
We do translation rights across the world. That's something that we're working to have bigger translation right deals, or more translation right deals.
So just maybe explain a bit how that works. That sounds interesting.
Okay. So we're talking to, for example, a publisher in India who is looking at several of our books, and if they think they'll work in the Indian market, they just basically contract with us to translate the book or publish in English for their market. So we have a contract in place, and they pay a royalty on sales, and usually pay an advance up front, which is good, and we split that with the author. So we've had translation deals in Hong Kong, in China. 4 books of ours have gone into China, which is exciting. Wow. And when we're looking at doing more European deals, Southeast Asian deals, that's something that we're working on. As far as getting into the US, we've just contracted our second book to go into the US with a US publisher. Wow. Their first print run's 10,000 copies, which is huge. And so that's a relationship that we're nurturing to get more books into the US. But yeah, so we are always actively seeking global opportunities for our authors.
Wow, so that, I mean, that's amazing. So you know, the issue that you talked about, where there's constraints in the Australian market, you're really sort of breaking that paradigm by being able to get people's names out into, I mean, the American market must just be huge for business books, I would have thought.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
And China, actually, come to that. I mean,
yeah.
Can't imagine writing a book and seeing it in Chinese. That would be odd. Wow. So, okay. So longer term, what do you think some of the challenges might be in the industry?
I don't know. I actually think it's looking quite rosy for books, because there was a patch where, there was a patch where people thought, oh, everyone just wants an ebook, or they want, they're going to do it themselves on Amazon CreateSpace, do their own self-publishing. But this year, trade non-fiction, which is a category that our books fit into, is up by 14% year on year. So people we're also screen based, especially with COVID, working remote. People want a book at the end of the day, paperback book. Yeah. So the challenge is kind of delivering our books in all formats. So we're quite used to doing ebooks. That's every book that we do is an ebook. We're moving to audio. So we're trialing some of our better sellers next year for audio. But I think in the years to come, everyone will expect every book to be in audio, every book to be in chapters to be serialized. But yeah, so it's just kind of delivering in all formats and all platforms. So I think that just keeping on top of that and the technology that delivers that is probably the biggest challenge for me.
I mean, maybe I'm just showing my age, but I would have thought there's always a desire to have a physical book in your hands. I mean, I've never really got on with ebooks and Kindle and all the tools that go with it, but but that could be just because I'm a dinosaur. I don't know, but you'd think that there was always going to be. Well, I'd like to think that there's always going to be some desire to have a physical book in your hand. You know.
I agree. I think the thing that sets a book apart is that you can pass it on to somebody. I mean, no one says, I read this great book on Kindle, let me email it. It just doesn't you can't do it for a start. It just doesn't happen. But as soon as I've read a good book, the first thing I do is tell somebody, I read this great book, and and then it's gone, they borrowed it, and then it'll get passed on and on again. So I think that's the advantage of a real book. Like my kids are in their 20s, and they're not huge readers, which upsets me greatly. But I will give them books from time to time, and they will read a book if you give it to them, the physical book, and give it to them.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Isn't it? I don't really think about that. But maybe I'm not a dinosaur after all. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm probably in your age bracket, so we're both dinosaurs, Peter.
yeah, true enough. Hey, maybe lastly, Lesley, just tell us a little bit about what you really like best about serving your customers. I mean, you've obviously got a very, very supportive process here from what you've just described to us, and you're a serious player in the market that's now sort of making connections overseas as well. So there's this massive service that you're providing for your business community. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you like best about that, some of the things that make you feel good as Lesley Williams.
Yeah, well, what I love is it's a creative process. I suppose this goes back to my arts degree. You're actually making something, and at the end of the whole process, the year-long process sometimes, and you've worked with the authors for all that time, the production team, and then you open a box of brand new books, and I wouldn't like to count how many books I've published. I just get a real sort of flutter when I get a new book that we've worked on, and I open that box and it's there, and all that hard work is in book form. So sounds a bit silly, but it's that creative process, actually making something that other people want to buy. That's why I keep doing this, I think.
And it must make the authors feel fantastic.
We always get them to take a selfie when they open that first box. And they're just like, the look on it, they're just delighted, especially if it's their first book. It makes it all worthwhile.
Hey, well, look, Lesley, thanks very much for coming to talk to us today and telling us about Major Street Publishing. What a fantastic story of a career and a business that's in its prime and growing. So again, thanks very much for your time. It was a real pleasure to talk to you today.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.